Member for Sherwood Park.
Good morrow. Pray, lend me your ear, thy ear. Pray, lend me thy ear. Mr. Speaker, today on the National Talk Like Shakespeare Day, I rise to speak on Bill 28, specifically to the very real concern and impacts this legislation will have on community libraries.
To support or not support?
To support or not to support? That is the question, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps after this debate, we'll have a better idea. There's outstanding work done every day, thank you, by the library in Strathcona County. Mr. Speaker, you don't have to know what the hours are of the library. When you show up in the morning, you see a crowd of people waiting every day for the doors to open at the Strathcona County Library in Sherwood Park. It is such a resource to our community, so beloved, so well used, and so trusted that we're left wondering where this legislation came from. And while I promise to not turn this chamber into a 5-act play, I cannot ignore the wisdom of William Shakespeare himself, who warned us wisely and slowly they stumble that run fast. Those words from Romeo and Juliet that are particularly relevant today because, Mr. Speaker, that is exactly what the public libraries across Alberta are asking of this government. Slow down. Consult meaningfully. Ensure that in trying to address the concerns that you may have, we are not creating many, many more. As Mr. Shakespeare also reminds us in The Tempest, what's past is prologue. And what we have seen from this government time and time again is a pattern of rushing legislation, shoddy legislation, of centralizing power and failing to listen to the very people who will be affected most, failing to listen to Albertans. And Bill 28 is, again, no exception to this pattern, this prologue written by the UCP. Mr. Speaker, let's be clear about what's at stake. Public libraries are not some abstract institution. They're not ideological battlegrounds. They're living, breathing community spaces. They're where newcomers find resources to start building their life here, where job seekers access tools they need to access the workforce, where seniors find connection, where families gather and spend time on outings, where children discover the joy of reading. At the Strathcona County Library, that work happens every single day through literacy programs, internet access, job search support, and safe, welcoming spaces for all. The library itself has become a centre where newcomers are often getting access to the social services provided by the provincial government. And yet, Mr. Speaker, despite all the good that's being done, this government has chosen to include sweeping changes to the Library Act within this omnibus bill, without any meaningful consultation, without careful consideration, and without respect for the local governance model that has served Albertans well for decades. No one asked for this, Mr. Speaker. I can assure you. We've had the member across the way talking about the number 0 a lot. He's mentioned 0 many times. What I'd like to mention is that 0 times has anyone written the MLA for Sherwood Park to raise any concerns about the content in the libraries at the Strathcona County Library. 0 times. It's never heard about. Where is this coming from? It is unknown. And I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, about some of the number 1 priorities, because we keep track of them. I think the number 1 priority that we get is we hear about health care. Clearly that comes up a lot. Yep. We've been hearing about pensions. That comes up a lot. People are anxious about that. We've been hearing about public safety. We've been hearing about disability services and access to AISH. We've been hearing a lot about coal mining. In particular, nobody wants coal mining in the Rocky Mountains, and they want to protect Alberta's headwaters. Not once have I received any information or any requests mentioning anything about content in the libraries in the Strathcona County Public Libraries. No one asked for this. In Sherwood Park, I've not received a single inquiry on what is on the library shelves. This legislation allows for people that are not from Sherwood Park, not from Strathcona County, to raise concerns and then invite inspectors to come into the Strathcona County Library, like Thought Police, and wreak havoc on the community that we've created inside that library. It is shoddy legislation, cut and paste from the US mega movement. We've seen this before with the UCP. In good faith, we stand in the legislature and advise the government against adopting shoddy legislation, like the legislation they brought in to take the limits off gifts, which led to entitled Conservatives taking private flights, jets on luxury private jets, to hockey games in other cities. At the beginning of the 2023 hockey season, they brought in legislation to remove gift limits for MLAs. By the end of the hockey season, the Premier was sitting with Sam Raish in a skybox in Vancouver. She was flown there, gifted a flight there on a private jet. And now the next step we've heard recently, on the most significant day in the term of this government, when they took away the right for teachers to bargain in good faith for their wages and working conditions, the Premier took another flight to fly on a Saudi prince's luxury private jet. So they brought in shoddy legislation to remove gift limits, and then within a year, and then years on now, they are continuing to take private jets. The UCP get private jets, and Albertans just get regrets. This is not thoughtful government. It is a power grab. This legislation is another example of the UCP exuding more control over municipalities, another step in a troubling pattern, the prologue they have written, of undermining local decision-making. Municipalities are not subsidiaries of the provincial government. They are partners. They are democratically elected bodies that understand the unique needs of their communities. And when it comes to libraries, that local knowledge matters. The local community standards matter. Under the current system, library boards made up of community volunteers and local representatives are entrusted with governance, policy oversight, and ensuring that services reflect the needs of people they serve in their community. Bill 28 disrupts that balance. It shifts authority away from local boards and professional staff and places it in the hands of the minister. It creates a misalignment between responsibility and decision-making power. It centralizes control in a way that both is unnecessary and deeply concerning. Mr. Speaker, despite what this government might think, local decision-making is not a weakness, it is an enormous strength. And Albertans have been clear. They do not want the government eroding the autonomy of municipalities. But the concerns do not stop there. One of the most troubling aspects of Bill 28 is the breadth of power it grants. While the stated intent may be to protect children, something we all want to do in this legislature, the language of the bill goes far beyond that. As written, it would allow restrictions on access to library materials on any topic, in any format, for any age group. That's not targeted policy, that's not a light touch or a subtle clarification of the rules as the minister might present to us. As he'd have you hear, it's just a subtle change. It's sweeping, unchecked authority. And let us call it what it is. It's censorship. Yeah. Even if materials remain physically present in a library, restricting access through provincial directives to the local community library is still a barrier. It still limits the ability of Albertans to access information freely. As Shakespeare wrote in Twelfth Night, there is no darkness but ignorance. Libraries exist to combat that ignorance, to provide access to knowledge, to foster curiosity, to support lifelong learning. Bill 28 risks undermining that very mission. Mr. Speaker, there are also serious concerns about privacy. Public libraries have long been champions of intellectual freedom and confidentiality. Albertans trust that what they read, what they research, and what they borrow remains private. But this legislation introduces the possibility of age verification requirements that could force libraries to collect and store sensitive personal information, such as dates of birth. In an era where cyber threats are increasing, this is not a trivial concern. Libraries have been working digitally to reduce the amount of personal data they retain, precisely to protect users from the risks like identity theft. Bill 28 moves in the opposite direction. Is the government backing up this bill with the funding to ensure that every library across this province has cybersecurity protection that is as strong as the provincial government's? This bill creates vulnerabilities. It asks frontline staff, many of whom are young workers, to act as gatekeepers to verify identification and potentially to manage sensitive information about patrons. And it goes even further. Under this bill, inspectors would have the authority to enter libraries, interview staff, including part-time employees, to compel them to provide information and library operations about patrons. It's asking inspectors to come in, ask underage Albertans to snitch on patrons, to report on what they're seeing. This is bonkers, Mr. Speaker. It raises serious questions about both the privacy and psychological safety of our workers. Librarians who take good care to make sure that their volunteers, their youth volunteers, and their under 18 employees come in and work in a safe environment are now at risk of someone from some far-flung community outside of their own reporting on a library, sending an inspector, and then having that inspector come in and accost the underage employees in the library. It is not a place where you imagine will be a space of safety, something that is created in most libraries across this province, an environment that people want to visit that is safe and welcoming. There will be costs to this that are not being addressed by the minister, and we are left with that constant thing we hear from the UCP. Just trust us. We'll take care of it in regulations. We're not trying to do what you think we're trying to do. Then why are you cutting and pasting legislation from the US mega movement and bringing it into Alberta? Why not let our Alberta-made way that we manage libraries continue? Because it works well. It is an excellent system. It is collaborative. It is practical. It is respectful of a community of diversity. It is not some US cut and paste mega legislation. Mr. Speaker, I think after raising a lot of good quotes from Shakespeare, and speaking with some passion about how much I appreciate the library in Strathcona County, I think I'd like to let you know I will not be supporting this omnibus bill because of the components in it that are going to be bad for libraries in Alberta and especially in Sherwood Park. And with that, I move that we adjourn debate.
Having heard the motion by the member for Sherwood Park to adjourn debate, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. That is carried.
Under Government Bills and Orders for third reading, Bill 20.